Hello guys, welcome back to Anita Crochets. My name is Anita. Today I have this granny stripe skater skirt. I intended to make something straight, but then I have a design I'm trying to recreate that I felt like I needed to twist a little bit and have it be my creation, but just have a little bit of resemblance. So I'm doing this for Gail's coat. I hope this serves you justice. I'm just sorry that I just didn't make exactly what you sent me. But yes, this is like part one of what we agreed on making, which is a dress. So let me just take you guys through how to make the skirt, and then later I'll be transforming this into a dress, okay? So to start off, I have this yarn. It is really thin. Okay, it is size 2 yarn. It is it is seagull. Yeah, it is seagull size 2 yarn, 100% acrylic. So I'm going to have to double my strands so that I get some sort of thickness, which I am looking for. But if you're working with DK yarn, that will be like a great alternative if you cannot get this. Also, I am working with a 5mm hook. A 5.5 millimeter hook. So to start off, I'm going to make a slip knot, and I'm going to work chains in sets of 3, right? Chains in sets of 3, and the total number of chains that you work need to be divisible by both 3 and 4, if you know what I mean. So for example, I worked 96 chains, okay? 96 is divisible by 3, and it is also divisible by 4. So why I am choosing chains that are divisible by both 3 and 4 is the first step of the pattern requires us to have a number that is divisible by 3, like you will see, and then the second row after the first one, literally the third row after the second one, requires us to have a number of foundation chains that are divisible by 4, as you will see. I'll be explaining that later in the tutorial, but yes. So I suggested that sizes small can work about 96 minus 1, which makes it 95. Then sizes medium can go up to like 108 minus 1, which makes it 107. So that means you are going to be deducting 1 chain of the total number of chains that you have, because we are working in rounds. Whenever we are working in rounds, we deduct that one last stitch, because we are going to be working a slip stitch into the first stitch that started the row. So that means the first stitch acts as our first and last stitch, because we are working in rounds. All right, so guys, once you have your chains complete, you are going to work a slip knot into the very first stitch that started your row. Then you will chain 1 and work a single crochet into that very same stitch, and then work 1 single crochet into every chain stitch all the way around until you come to the end of your row. So that means sizes small will have a total of 95 stitches, sizes medium will have a total of 107 stitches, and sizes large will have a total of 119 stitches. All right, so let me let you guys work your single crochets into every chain stitch all the way around, and when you come to the end of your row, you'll work a slip stitch into the chain 1. Then I'll meet you there and show you what to do. So guys, I am at the end of my row. At this point, I had already worked 1 row and then realized I had not hit the record button, so I had to undo it. That's why my row looks kind of messy. But yes, to start from where we ended, after working your slip stitch, you are going to chain 2, and into that very first stitch you're going to work 3 double crochets. So the chain 2 does not act as a stitch, it doesn't count as a stitch. So you work your 3 double crochets, and then you're going to skip 2 and get into the next stitch and work 3 double crochets all in that very same stitch. Okay, so like you can see, I have my 3 double crochets. So yarn over, skip 2, get into the next stitch, work 3 double crochets all into that very same stitch. Okay, once you have that, you're still going to skip 2 get into the next stitch and work 3 double crochets, just like that. And now you are just going to be repeating this all the way around, skipping 2 stitches and working 3 double crochets into the next stitch. And this is what you are going to do for every stitch all the way around until you have 2 stitches left to end your row. That's why I'm going to meet you guys, then show you what to do. Once you are at the end of your row, you're going to skip those last 2 stitches and you will just get into the second chain stitch of the 2 chains that started the row, and in there insert your hook and work a slip stitch to end your row. Okay, now to work the next row, we are going to chain 2, chain 2, and we are going to have to turn our work. It will be kind of hard to like really see exactly where we are going to, you know, insert. It will be kind of, you know, may feel like you're inserting your hook into the wrong gap, but yes, just insert your hook in there. This time I chained 3 because I felt like there will be multiple stitches at my seam line. So you're going to chain 3 and work 2 double crochets into that gap, and then chain 1, work 3 double crochets once again into that very same gap. Okay, once you have that, you're now going to yarn over, skip the next 2 stitches and into the next gap. Like you can see, I'm going to work 3 double crochets all in that very same gap. You see that? Then I'm going to skip the next 2 stitches and get into the next gap and work 3 double crochets all in that very same gap. Remember the first gap we worked 5 double crochets. We had a chain 3, then 2 double crochets, chain 1, 3 double crochets all in the very same gap. Now for these next ones, we are just skipping 2 and getting into the next gap and working 3 double crochets. Once we have 3 sets of 3 double crochets in the next 3 gaps, we are now going to skip 2, get into the next gap, and in this gap we are going to work 3 double crochets. Like you can see, chain 1. Okay, so we chain 1 and work 3 double crochets once again into this very same gap, just like that. So that's my second double crochet, and then I'll go in with my third, not my third but 6th. Okay, so you see what we have. Now we are going to get into the next gap and work 3 double crochets in there. Remember, I am working the 6 double crochets after 3 sets of 3 double crochets, so that is 1. I'll get into the next gap and work my set of 3 double crochets, just like that, and then get into my third gap and work 3 double crochets, or my set of 3 double crochets. Okay, now that there are 3 sets of 3 double crochets, I'm now going to work a corner, more like, you know, more like a corner, let me say. So in here, into the next gap, I'm going to work 3 double crochets, right? Chain 1, work 3 double crochets once again into the very same gap. Guys, the granny stripe is really simple, and I see no reason as to why I have to go like really slow. But yes, this is what you do for the next gaps. After 3 sets of 3 double crochets for the next gaps, you work your 6 double crochets, and the 6 double crochets should have a chain 1 in between. So just be counting every 3 sets of 3 double crochets, then work your corners, okay, until you come to the end of your row. Now at this point, this is what I have. I'm trying to put my tripod right. Yeah, at the end of your row, you should have your 3 sets of 3 double crochets. Then you will work a slip stitch into the 3rd chain stitch of the 3 chains that started this row. I hope you guys got this one, really, because the granny stripe is really simple, but this is how your work should look like. The increases, which were the 6 double crochets, have been worked after every 3 sets of 3 double crochets. Now for this row we are going to chain 3, and the 3 chains are going to act as a double crochet stitch. So into the very first gap, after we turn our work, we are going to work 2 double crochets. After that, we are just going to keep skipping 2 stitches and working 3 double crochets into the next gap. Skip 2, work into the next gap, you work 3 double crochets all in the very same gap. Okay, and then skip the next 2 stitches, work 3 double crochets all in the very same gap. Now for this row we are not working any increases like we did on the previous row. So when you skip and get into that chain 1 space that was in between the previous increase, we are just going to work 3 double crochets into that chain 1 space, like you can see. Then we shall skip the 3 and get into the next, oh my goodness, yes, get into the next gap and work your 3 double crochets. So this is what you are going to just keep doing all the way around, okay, until you get to the end of your row. This time, like I said, we are not working any increments. We are just working our granny stripe the way it should be without any increments. So just be working 3 double crochets into every chain, into every gap, okay, until the end of your row or until the end of the gaps. And then work a slip stitch, skip 2 and work a slip stitch into the third chain stitch of the 3 chains that started this row. So guys, I'm going to let you go all the way around with this until you come to the end of your row right there and work a slip stitch, okay, in there, and that's where I'll meet you. Now guys, this is why I am at the end of my row and I'm chaining 3. But before I work the next row, let me just show you how it looks like so far. Remember, on this row I never had any increments whatsoever. It's just the normal granny stripe. So this is how your work should look like. Now I'm having my brother disturb me, guys, don't mind him. So into this very first gap, I'm going to work 2 double crochets. First, remember that the 3 double crochets act as a double crochet stitch. So I'm just working 2 double crochets into this first gap and then chaining 1, chain 1 just like that, and get into this very same gap and work 3 double crochets once again in that very same gap, okay, just like that. Now you're going to skip the next 2 stitches and work into that next gap right there. You get in there and work 3 double crochets all in that very same gap. Okay, skip the next 2 stitches and into that gap you work 3 double crochets all in the very same gap. So those are 2 sets of 3 double crochets, okay. Skip the next 2 stitches, get into that gap and work 3 double crochets once again all in that very same gap. That makes it 3 sets of 3 double crochets. So once again you skip the next 2 stitches and work into the gap. So in there you work 3 double crochets all in that very same gap, which makes it 4 sets of 3 double crochets, okay. So that means we are now going to work an increase in this 5th gap. So when we get in there, we are going to work 3 double crochets, chain 1 like that, and work 3 double crochets once again all in that very same gap. So that means in this gap we have worked 6 double crochets, okay. See what we have? After those 4 we work that increase. Now this is what we are going to do repeatedly, so let me just take you through it once again. Skip the next 2 stitches and get into that next gap and work 3 double crochets. Skip the next 2 stitches, get into the gap, work 3 double crochets. So those are 2 sets of 3 double crochets. And then skip the next gap, sorry, skip the next 2 stitches, get into the next gap and work 3 double crochets. So that makes it 3 sets of 3 double crochets, and we need that 4th set. So we get into the next gap and work 3 double crochets, which makes it a total of 4 sets of 3 double crochets. So that means the next gap is going to have an increase. So to work our increase, we are going to work 3 double crochets, chain 1, chain 1, and then work 3 double crochets once again, all in this very same gap. Okay, so this is what you are just going to keep repeating all the way around for all our gaps. Okay, just work the increase after 4 sets of 3 double crochets. So in there, that's why we will have this increase right in there. Once again, you count 4 and work an increase until you come to the end of your row right there. That's why I'm going to meet you guys after you have worked your slip stitch. So I am here with my row. This is how it looks like so far, like you can see. Now, like I said previously, when we have a row of increase, our next row is a row without any increments. So what's going to happen with this row is we are going to chain 3 and turn our work. Into the very first gap, we are going to work 2 double crochets because the 3 chains act as a double crochet stitch. Now we are going to skip the next 2 stitches and work 3 double crochets into the next gap. Okay, once you have your 3 double crochets, you will skip the next 2 stitches, get into the next gap and work 3 double crochets. So those are 2, and that's the 3rd one. Skip the next stitches, get into that next gap and work 3 double crochets. And this is what we are just going to keep doing for every gap on this row. So this means we are not working any increments whatsoever. Every gap is going to have 3 double crochets in it and not more than that or less. Okay, so yes, even when you get to that chain 1 space that is in between the previous 2 sets of 3 double crochets, in that chain 1 space we are just going to work 3 double crochets, then skip the next 3 stitches and get into the gap and work 3 double crochets in there. You see that? So this is what you are going to do all the way around. We are not working any increments whatsoever. I'm just going to get back and, I'm going to get back on the next row just to show you how it should be worked, because the next row is our last row of increase, and then later I will explain to you the rest. So work this until the end of your row, and I'm going to meet you at the end of your row to show you what to do. Here I am with my work. This is where I am. So I'm just trying to make sure that I didn't miss a clip, honestly. I'm not sure if I missed a clip. But this row is meant to have an increase. So with that, okay. Not sure, but let's say, yes. Oh yeah, this is the right one. So yes, you chain 3, the 3 chains act as a double crochet stitch, and into the very first gap after you turn your work, you will work 2 double crochets, then chain 1, work 3 double crochets, all in that very same gap. Okay, now moving on, you get to the next gap, you work 3 double crochets. Okay, then skip the next 2 stitches, get into that next gap and work 3 double crochets. Remember, for this row we are working an increase after 5 sets of 3 double crochets, because previously we were working the increase after 4 sets of 3 double crochets. So this time it is 5 sets of 3 double crochets, and what we have so far is 3 sets. So we get into the next gap and work our 3 double crochets, which makes it 4 sets of 3 double crochets. So we need to work the 5th set. So we get into the next gap and work our 3 double crochets just like that. And then after this, we are now going to work an increase just like we did when starting the row. So when we get into this, when we get into this next gap, we are going to work 3 double crochets all in that very same gap, just like that, and then chain 1, work 3 double crochets once again in that very same gap. So we have our increase. Now once we have this increase, we are still now going to do the very same thing we did previously. Skip the next 2 stitches, get into that gap and work 3 double crochets, right? 3 double crochets in there, so that's 1 set. Get into the next gap and work 3 double crochets, which makes it 2 sets, right? Get into the next gap, work 3 double crochets. Those are 3 sets now, right? Get into the next gap and work your 4th set of 3 double crochets. So this is the 4th set, okay? And then to work our 5th set, we get in there and work 3 double crochets, just like that. And now into that gap, we are going to work 3 double crochets, chain 1, three double crochets once again in that very same gap. Okay, so this is what you do for all your gaps, okay? Work the increase every after 5 sets of 3 double crochets. Now I'm going to meet you at the end of the row and then tell you what to do. Now like you can see, I have come to the end of my row. And at this point, I'm going to do one thing, which is not work any increments anymore until I have the length of the skirt that I desire. So to go forward, I'm going to chain 3. 3 of the chains act as a double crochet stitch. Then I'll work 2 double crochets into that very first gap. Skip 2, get into the next gap and work 3 double crochets. Skip 2 stitches, get into the next gap and work 3 double crochets all in that very same gap. The reason as to why I say skip 2 stitches is because what has to be the 3rd stitch is literally the gap in between that stitch and the next one, right? So yes, we are just going to be working our granny stripes. No more increments whatsoever. These are just enough. We don't want the skater skirt to become a ruffle skirt. So to keep that kind of design, we don't work any increments again from the ones we have worked. So what we do is we are just going to go around with our rows, working just the normal granny stripe rows, no more increments like you can see. So just do this all the way until the end of your row right there and work a slip stitch. Then you repeat and repeat and repeat until you have the length of the skirt that you desire. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to show you how to work your waistline, your waistband, and then I'll let you work the rest of the skirt on your own. So now to work our waistband, we are going to find a point at the back. So this is it. We insert our hook into the opposite side of our foundation chains, and we are going to yarn over and pull through a loop. Now from here we are going to chain 5. I really don't want a wide waistband. I love a simple one, very small and simple. So I will chain 6. Chain 6 and into the second chain stitch from the hook, you are going to work a single crochet, and then you're going to work 1 single crochet into every chain stitch until you go all the way down all the way down, right? Once you're at the end of your chains, you are now going to work a slip stitch into the next stitch, which is on the opposite side of your foundation chains. Once again, work another slip stitch. Now once you have that, you're going to turn your work, right, and work a single crochet into the last single crochet you previously worked, right? In there, work your single crochet, and then work another single crochet, because we are now working all the way up. I had 4 single crochets in total, but I suggest that you have 5 so that you have a wider band, more so if your working size is medium and large. Yeah, because I was working for small, this was okay, but I advise to start with 6 chains and then end up with 5 single crochets. Okay, so yes, you chain 1, turn your work your single crochets all the way down. If you have followed my advice, you should have 5 single crochets. Okay, and once you have your single crochets complete, you are now going to get into the next stitch on the opposite side of your foundation chain and work a slip stitch, and then work another slip stitch into the next stitch, turn your work, and now work, along the waistband. So you work your single crochets going back all the way up to the end of your waistband, like that. You work your last single crochet in there, chain 1, turn your work. Now we are working all the way back down to the foundation chains. So you work your single crochets once again into every stitch. Make sure that you have the same number of single crochets on every row, or else you will have a narrower waistband if you work less stitches, and a wider waistband if you work more stitches. So make sure you have the very same number of stitches, and once you do, you are now going to get into the next stitch on the opposite side of your foundation chains and work a slip stitch, work another slip stitch into the next stitch on the opposite side of your foundation chains. And now here you turn your work and then work your single crochets going back up. Okay, working into the very first single crochet stitch you previously worked, then go back up. So literally you are just going to keep going up and down, up and down, up and down for all the chain stitches, or for all the stitches on the opposite side of your foundation chains until the end. Then you will get your yarn needle and hand sew the ends of the waistband together to close up your waistband. So once you have that, this is how your work should look like. Thank you so much for watching this very simple project. Let me see you all in my next tutorial. Goodbye.